Well, first of all, thanks for being here. It's great to see you.
It's my pleasure.
I've always wanted to meet you. I guess I'd like to start by asking you about what it was like growing up in Centralia, about your childhood. What was it like?
It's one of the reasons I like to come back.
Mm-hmm.
It's God's country. They're real people. Not that they're everywhere else as fake people, but you just found a higher degree of real people. Almost every person you met had something to teach you, and I was taught plenty.
Well, I was going to ask you how that influenced your career in public life.
Well, one of the things was that it seems like every mother or father on the street was your parent. If you did something, they saw you do it, and they called your parents. You got home and says, I understand today you did such and such to the library. And you think, God, how can they be everywhere? But they were.
Real networking, I guess.
Yes, had a whole network set up.
What about, we hear an awful lot about small town values and how at a very basic level they really tell us what's best about America. How do those values in Centralia shape your outlook and get you on your path?
Number one, a firm belief in you're going to get caught. If you're going to do something, you'll be caught.
In terms of, how about hard work?
A lot of that. That was a big thing that was poured into the brew down there.
There probably were a lot of people who served as role models when you were growing up. And just if you tell me about some of those kinds of folks and what kind of impact they had on you as you grew up.
Well, I think my biggest role model was my mother. As you can see, I strayed into politics, and she was the first woman elected to the office of precinct committee man in the state of Illinois. Usually, the precinct committee woman was appointed by the fellow who was elected precinct committee man. But not mother. She ran on her own, mounted the campaign, and was elected. So she was not a committee woman. She was a precinct committee man.
What year was that?
I guess I spoke too quickly when I said, this is not one, since it's about me, I'm going to have to study for it. I'd say it was probably early 40s.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were born in 1940s.
That's correct.
That was after you were born.
Now everyone knows how old I am.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like you sort of got politics at the breakfast table then, like a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And lunch and dinner.
Well, what kinds of discussions did you have in your family about politics when you were growing up?
Oh, my mother would say, Senator so-and-so is coming in tomorrow and you're going with me to meeting. Or her.
Mm-hmm.
And our next week I'm going to Springfield and you're coming with me.
What kinds of people did you meet? Could you give me an idea of some of the characters and the political figures you met?
Well, my mother's first cousin was the administrative assistant to Congressman Charles W. Versailles from the old 23rd District of Illinois, which George Shippey is the current pew holder in.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime we went to Salem, I went over to see Congressman Purcell, my mother's cousin Susan, doing her job as administrative assistant. I liked to see what she did, what she administered as administrative assistant. I found out it was considerable.
Mm-hmm. So you got an appreciation.
Yes,
early on.
and then I aspired to that lofty office myself.
Did you run? Or
No,
that was an appointed.
That's one that you run someone's campaign, and then because they like all the hard work you did for no pay, they said, here, come in and sit in this chair and do this.
Mm-hmm. So you went to the University of Illinois. You have
Yes,
a degree
sir.
in.
And I also taught down here at SIU.
Well, I didn't know that. Tell me about that.
I taught government and economics.
When was that?
About 10 years ago.
Government and economics here
Yes,
at
sir.
Carbondale?
Yes, sir. worked for Jack Isikoff, which I'm sure is still a legend around here.
There's probably a lot of difference between teaching politics and actually practicing it, isn't there?
A world of difference. In fact, it's perhaps two different things.
Could you give me a concrete example of how the two differ?
Well, perhaps the best one I can give you, just tell you they're different.
What interested you so much in public service and life and politics beyond
The high pay we got. I think that's the first thing that drew me away from journalism. I finally found a career in which I could make more money being in public service than I could as a reporter.
Well, the two are usually at odds, aren't they? Journalists and politicians?
With the exception of the people for whom I worked. And President Reagan never saw an adversarial relationship between the press corps and what he was doing in his presidency. He saw it as an extension. And he says, Brady, he says, we got to bring this into every person's home this evening so that they'll hear about it and not read about it by some pundit who doesn't know what I'm talking about.
He's a remarkable man in many respects.
Yes.
Would you mind telling me about your relationship with him?
Well, I was also fortunate to have been John Connolly's press secretary. And along with my keen work and $12 million, we got him one delegate at the convention. And for 4 years I had to put up with being the only, quote, non-Texan, unquote, in the damn campaign. And then I go from there to becoming the only non-Californian in the Reagan entourage. I was going to say, Illinois, step up with another Mr. Lincoln, with another president, so I can be back home and say, I'm not a I am. I'm the real item.
What was Mr. Reagan like to work for?
The dream. Intelligent, and all these canards you heard that after lunch he'd go into the office next to the Oval Office and sleep. No. He was usually coming into my office to get butter, something like that, or going from floor to floor to make sure that everyone was doing something that was productive. I can remember the first thing that he told us when we came in there, he got all the special assistants together. He said, the first one I see with their feet on the furniture is out of here. Because we had seen a prior administration, and a lot of the pictures were taken in the office, head back, lean back in the chair with the feet up on the desk. He said, we don't own this place. We're merely stewards of this place. And people will judge our stewardship by how well we left the campsite when we leave it. And I heard that a lot in Boy Scouts, that we always tried to make the campsite look better when we left it than it was when we found it. And you'd get some what we call squaw wood, the kind of small wood that you use and could use one match, and once you got the squaw wood going, it would set a log on fire. You could build your fire. And we'd put some of that under some rock somewhere so that anyone coming in there who had been caught in the rain and was pulling their canoes off the lake, we'd say, aha, look what someone did here for us. Mm-hmm. We can dry out now.
Leaving the place better than when you came
yes.
in. Any other thoughts about Mr. Reagan that you think would be... a lot of us only know him from what we've seen on television.
Well, what you saw was what he was. I mean, he didn't go in and put on, fake fur or something like that and come out as something different. He was what he said and what he was. What you saw was what we got.
How do you think historians will evaluate his role?
I think historians will look upon it kindly and with respect. because from the day we got in there, he had an agenda. He knew where we were going, and he knew some ways that he'd tried in California how to get there. And there were ways that we didn't know. And he taught us those ways.
How did that come about in practical terms, from something he would think about to actually being translated into policy?
Well,
and your role in that too, as I think about that.
I was a good listener, and I took good notes also. For example, if prisons were having trouble getting all the laundry done and all that, who do you bring in? He brought people who were in the hotel and motel business. They get the sheets and everything done every day for their char people to come in and change the sheets on the bed. And the same thing with there are millions of government cars out there, probably too many government cars out there. He brought in the people from Hertz and Avis, and they knew how to get them service, how to set up a rotation plan, you know, how to bring one off the road, take it in and do, I don't know why I can say this, a Jiffy Lube number on it, you know, how to have all the maintenance, first echelon maintenance that needed to be done to that vehicle done, so that it would run 15 or 25 more years.
Being in the White House, I'm curious as to, you know, you've had an opportunity now to see it from both sides, from the outside looking in, and vice versa. How much? I'm
doing a lot of seeing it from the outside now.
Yeah, I can imagine. How much does the president, any president for that matter, know what's going on in the lives of the people of the country and how they feel about things beyond the polls?
Well, Mrs. Reagan and President Reagan worked as a team, and she didn't have to go to do the shopping for the mess every day, but she still was a shopper, and he'd go along. He'd say, "My God," he said, "this was 15 cents last week, 75 cents today." She said, "Sure, honey, come over here and look at this. These melons were a nickel last week, and look what they are. They're $1.25 today." And
so,
you know, the same thing the housewife was feeling when she'd say, "Are these prices ever going to go down?" He said he'd call his people in and say, "What are ways that we can make these prices go down?"
For you, what was the biggest challenge being his press secretary?
Well, you probably read about it in the New York Times. He had gotten in a lot of trouble with environmentalists by saying that trees were perhaps one of the largest pollutants on the planet. And here we are in Arbor Day going out planting trees and all of that. He said because they produce nitrogen oxide. And we were flying over Louisiana one day, and there was this huge forest fire on, and here was all this smoke going like that. And I got a pal of mine who rode up in the front with me in the plane. I said, "Kachigan, come here, look at that, killer trees." And Hal Raines was the only member of the press corps. Put that in the New York Times. I remember Bill Casey, who became our director of CIA, called the house and said, "Brady, the plane's going out at 5:15 out of Dulles." He said, "I don't know why I'm bothering to telling you this, because you're not going to be on it." And Stu Spencer was the director of political operations at the time, and the press who could always come up to my table where I sat, and I would do a briefing right up there. They were finally beginning to get to Stu, drive him crazy. And he said, "You got to get Brady back on this plane." He said, "I don't have time to do my own work. I'm doing his work and trying to do mine and trying to plan ahead." And he said, "Either that or we're going to have to find a 4x8 sheet of plywood and nail it between this door, between the coach part of the plane and the first class part of the plane. And so I remember me says, Brady, you're a person again. Plane's going out at 5:15 out of Dallas. Be on it.
I imagine there are a lot of stories like that.
Yes. I didn't use killer trees again.
No more killer trees.
Vocabulary, I hacked it off and threw it away.
You've been an inspiration to many people in the years following the assassination attempt. What sustained you in that struggle toward rehabilitation and your work?
How about the alternative? I wasn't ready for him to dig a hole and throw me in and then throw dirt on me. I was not ready for that. And I know that I'm not the one that says when I come and when I go. But I remember my neurosurgeon saying to my wife, Sarah, or as I call her, the raccoon, told the raccoon, says, your husband has a tremendous will to live. And he did. He said he's fighting all the way. And so I think if he was going to take me, that perhaps would have been the easiest time to do it. I would have offered, or was in a position to offer perhaps the least resistance. But evidently I had more resistance there than I thought I could gin up.
Mm-hmm. What about family and friends and how they helped?
Well, one of the great things is all the people that I went to school with in Century I'm still close to. We're still pals and still go out and knock one back every now and then. Or shoot hoops or do that sort of thing. And is that a signal for me?
No, I'm giving signals to the camera, sorry.
Okay, I saw that, and I thought...
No, just ignore me. I'm controlling those two.
I thought it was perhaps an audible at the line of scrimmage.
But you were saying that you still like to go to, you still have friends from your Centralia days.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And like I would know, if I drive into Centralia, I'd know where to find them right now. They'd be at the Green Grill.
Mm. How important was the role of faith in your recovery?
Very important.
Could you talk about that?
Yes. I told my doctor, I says, I'm not as far back as I'm going to come. He said, oh, really? He said, how do you know? What else are you going to do? And I said, watch this space. He said, do you really believe that? And I said, yes, I believe it. Because if I didn't believe it, it wouldn't happen, would it? And he said, not a bit. I said, I believe it, and it's going to happen. And I have seen myself being able to do more things than when it just kind of stopped there for a while. And all of a sudden, I started doing new things. And there was a man up there that was saying, Brady, today you're going to be able to do this.
You do a lot of work with groups that work with the disabled. What kind of message do you give to other people?
I usually tell people that are in a chair walking with a cane two things. One, persevere, because it's always darkest before the dawn. I didn't know the day that I was going to walk. I know what precipitated it, though. They were called physical terrorists. And they used to beat on me and have more fun with me. Throw me around like Punchy the Clown or something like that. And I said, are you people withered enough that I can make a deal with you? And their chief says, I've been trying to get him to walk. Try it. Make a deal. I said, if you'll leave me alone for 10 minutes, I'll walk today. And they said, okay, and they all kind of backed off. And I said, where are the parallel bars? And they said, over there. And I went, thump, 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 right down the bars. And they all clapped. And then they started all coming around again. I said, wait a minute. I said, 10 minutes. And their chief says, by my watch, he still has 7 more minutes. I mean, they could stay away from me for 3 minutes, and then you don't want to get back in and beat on him again.
I have a feeling a lot of what helped was your sense of humor as well.
And the second thing I tell people is to keep your sense of humor. Because if I can remember doing the things I was told to do and, would have a pratfall or something like that, if I got so stuffy and so wrapped up in, what I was thinking about this, I would have never been able to do it. But, every now and then I'd have a good laugh at myself. Just sit down and say, Brady, you messed that one up.
You've seen the disabilities issue from the perspective of a policymaker in the White House and now as a person with a disability. We have the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yes, sir,
now.
I know.
What more needs to be done as far as that issue? What
Well,
areas
ADA is working. I travel 3 days a week, and that's almost a killer in itself. And I've noticed that the transportation industry, trains, airlines, buses, and people like that are doing all they can to make it easier for a person that's physically challenged to travel. And there's still one thing. We went out and talked to the people at Northwest Airlines, and I said, hey, I'm not a piece of baggage. They say, we're now going to take rows 19 through 56 and board them. I said, you want to get loaded now? I said, not till I get on the plane. But I mean, you're a piece of freight. Load him. All right, if you can bring it out here, that's fine.
It's an attitudinal thing.
It's,
Remembering their people.
There's a lot of it, yeah. We're not second-class citizens. We still have a lot to give as becoming a laureate. You'll find out what we can do. When I talk to prospective employers, I say, hire us. We'll surprise the hell out of you. If you would, this before I had a driver, if you had to see what I would have to do to get to the metro to get into work, I mean, it was clever. It was like you were in OSS or something like that. You'd get in there. But now with the driver, it's being able to get to my driveway. And he takes it from there, takes the chair, and I have a platform that comes out in the van, and I roll on it, and the platform goes up. And the van is one of these kneeling vans. It goes down, like a camel kneels down to where it's 3 inches off the ground. And then when the thing goes back in, the back door shuts, it goes back up to normal van height.
That's ingenious.
Yes, it is. And I say things to it. I'll say, kneel down, van. And it goes, or up now, van, up, 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 up.
When you're working for groups like the National Organization on Disability and National Head Injury Foundation, what primary role do you take with those groups as an advocate?
Well, I do a lot of advocating. And I have different roles at both places, and both of them have different goals and objectives, and spend a lot of time on the Hill. And I haven't found a member yet that won't let me in their office.
So there's good support there.
Mm-hmm. And I can call them up and I get right through. One of my pet peeves is on the Hill. The receptionist will say, I don't know whether he's in. You just want to say, you want to, pull off your Wile E. Coyote fur and say, now, set the phone down, go in and look inside his office. If he's behind the desk, he's in. Or has he passed you in the last 5 minutes and said, I'm going downstairs to the carry-out and I'll be back in a moment? I mean, the offices are, you could put 15 congressmen in the space that you have in here based on, how much square foot a congressman is given. Even Sonny Bono would say, they've given me the Taj Mahal. He didn't know that the way you get your office is that you have a staff person come over and put in a number, and then they shake this thing up and they draw the number out and says, Bono, you've got office 4126 in the Cannon office building, or you've got one of the big offices in the Rayburn building. They're all about the same. People like the Rayburn building because the AA has an office in the Rayburn building, about the size of the member's office. And the member just has to learn to live with that.
I'd like to turn the attention now to gun control.
Yes, sir.
Of course, the Brady bill bears your name. What do you think about those in Congress now who are trying to repeal the law or got it?
They're crazy. More guns means more violence. More violence means more carnage. More people in one of these things than walking around with a stick. And they're also talking a game about doing the same thing with the ban on assault weapons. Just what we need are weapons of war on our streets. The police are outgunned now. You're going to give somebody an AR-15, an AK-47? Not. I hunt and I shoot trap and I shoot skeet. I sure as hell wouldn't want to be in the woods with someone in there hunting squirrels with an AK-47. And the range on one of those things is about 7 miles. You know, you're in the woods and the guy says, there he is. And if it misses you or a tree or something, if there's a playground or something over there like that, or someone taking their trash out on the other side of the woods, you know, bang. Being a victim is no fun. And I'm not going to get maudlin on you, so don't worry. But I'm just telling you, folks, let's don't fool around with these things.
A lot of the critics are running ads in today's newspaper.
I noticed that, you know, come out and harass him. I've been harassed before, and I've been harassed by the best of them. And I've learned it goes with the territory. And other than when Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's the thing that I think of in my own mind.
They look at it differently.
Yes, we lose 15 children a day from firearms in this country. 15 a day. That's more than are lost in Sweden or in the United Kingdom in a day. You know, of any age, not just children. 8.
Does it frustrate you as a Republican that a lot of members of your own party are pushing so hard for this now?
Yeah, but I don't think it's really a party thing. I think they got all sanguine on this silly contract with America. I mean, I think there's some things that are good, and there are a lot of things in it that I don't think are all that good.
I'm curious about that. What advice would you give to Mr. Gingrich and Senator Dole?
Well, I think Dole's busy now, and he's going to continue to be busy for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And Gingrich may want to at some point go back to Cobb County, Georgia, and live under the laws that he passed or didn't pass, or had passed or didn't have passed. And I don't think Mr. Gingrich wants to do that. Not even if he could whisper it in Connie Chung's ear.
As we move to the end, I'm curious, you know...
I might say one thing on
please.
that. I think she more or less bagged Nudie's mommy on that.
You think so?
Yeah, I think anyone that had been around would not have fallen for you whisper it in my ear, and it'll just be between us, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And ducks will fly out of your tush.
You've come a long way from Centralia to the White House and beyond that. A lot of young people will probably be watching this program. What sort of advice would you give kids growing up today in Illinois about reaching their goals and living a full and satisfying life?
Stay in school. Do your homework. Study hard. I always had nuns across the street that would look and see what times our lights went on or off, and they would know whether I was doing homework or not. I think they had some.
What advice would you give them as someone from a small town about realizing their dreams and living a full and satisfying life?
Well, being from a small town is not an impediment. If anything, it's a plus. Because they know you've seen the whites of people's eyes. You've been in the trenches, and people have seen you, they've watched you. Stay in school, do your homework, study hard, and go on from elementary school, go as far as you can go. I can remember my father worked for the railroad, and we weren't the richest people in the town, although he told me that during the Depression is perhaps one of the best jobs to have. He never was worried about being out on the pavement selling apples or pencils or something like that. But when I went to the University of Illinois, I remember they'd save money, and I got $75 to go. But also, and you probably still have it at SIU, where they have legislative scholarships. But I said, go see Senator so-and-so. I don't think he's giving his scholarship away. So that took care of my tuition right there. And they also had a county examination. Do you still have the county examination?
No, we don't have that.
You go to the county courthouse on a certain day, they give the examination. And my father was in World War I, so my category was dependent of World War I veteran. And all 50 of us in the United States would compete against one another. And I got it through the academic examination as well as the legislative scholarship. Seeing some of those people that mother would say, I'm going to take you in to see Representative so-and-so today. See, what goes around comes around. It all comes back. And did I have a clue at the time that at some point that was going to pay my way through school? No, but it did.
That's a great story. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.
I did too.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay. And when you end here, go ahead and shake hands again.
Okay.
Tom, stay wide on a two-shot. What I want you to do is really try and find out from him, Jack. Becoming a Lincoln laureate wasn't something that he aimed to do. It just sort of happened. But now that it has happened to him, he's being recognized. What does that recognition mean to him? Does it validate everything that he's gone through, all the trials and tribulations with disability, with the Brady Act, with the things that he's done since then? Because I'm sure you could have just retired on a pension and said, the heck with it.
There was one group that hoped that I'd just stay home and watch the Home Shopping Network, or go to our beach house and just stay there. But I said, no, not my work here is not finished.
So is to paraphrase David's question, is this sort of a capstone of an achievement? Certainly got a lot more to do down the line.
Well, I'm so proud I'm bursting my buttons. And when I found out that they were going to ask us to speak for 3 minutes, I was writing some remarks at home, and I have a 16-year-old son named Scott. And Scott says, Daddy, just tell him it blows you away.
Thank you very much.
And I think he put it in the phraseology of the day. I am blown away.